With great data comes even greater access latency. Welcome to the Trino Community Broadcast, episode 20 today. Boom. We transform your latency woes into fast insights. The Trino Community Broadcast show we run always teaches you more about events and happenings in the open source Trino community, and we'll show you some cool stuff in Trino, what's happening. And you always have an opportunity to learn more from myself, Manfred, and of course, again, always our mighty leader, Brian Olsen, is joining us today.
Hello, everyone. And along with us today, we have our honored guest, Marius Grama. Welcome, Marius. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for having me here.
Definitely. So, Marius, what do you do and your day-to-day job, and kind of what's your involvement been recently with the Trino project?
I'm a software engineer, and I work for a classified market here in Austria. And I got involved in the Trino community by chance. Somebody told me about something related to Trino, about a query book from Pinterest.
Nice.
He mentioned along the side, hey, we are using either Spark SQL or Trino. And then I got interested in what Trino is doing, and I saw that it's open source, and slowly I got to tackle a bit of some issues, and then I got very, very interested about Trino.
You got bit by Commander Bun Bun and the Trino bug, huh?
Yeah,
don't talk about bunny-related sicknesses here, man.
No, nothing like that. It's more of a passion fever, you know.
Exactly, it's burning hot though.
Yes, for sure. So today we're going to be talking about Trino for the Trinewbie, and this is particularly something that's been heavy on my mind for the last couple months. We've had a lot of new people come in since we did the rebrand, and with that comes a lot of people that just don't come with the background of where does Trino fall in this whole data space. And then, further, we get even people that are just totally new to open source and trying to contribute. Maybe this is their first contribution. We're going to be talking a little bit about Marius's journey with Trino. And, Marius, you're really no stranger from what I know, you're no stranger to open source in general. And so I don't think it was quite the level of kind of learning curve that a lot of even totally open source newbies go through, but what we want to talk about is kind of the focus that our project is trying to take into these newer members of our community that maybe haven't even really had much experience in open source, and try to basically provide them a gentle landing to get involved in open source, because really at the end of the day it's a lot of fun to kind of be in this community, be hanging out with people. And so we're going to be talking about your experiences specifically around that, but we also want to talk about kind of some structure bits that are a little more difficult, admittedly, to find on our website, and we wanted to almost kind of make these show notes that we're going to have in the show kind of like a aggregated list of things that we should probably have on a page somewhere, and then eventually try to make that more official into the web page. But we'll get to a lot of that exciting stuff. We're even going to go through a little bit of a demo of how to actually open up your own issue, and then also open up your own pull request. So all that exciting stuff happening today. But before we hop into that, let's go to a quick word from our sponsor, Starburst.
I'm Colleen Tarto. I am the Director of Engineering on Starburst Galaxy.
What is it actually offering? So, I mean, I think this kind of builds on some of the open source Trino stuff, but is it doing a lot more? What kind of pains is it solving? Could you kind of give us a little bit of insight on what actual pain this is going to be alleviating?
Yeah, absolutely. And so to think about that, I always like to go back and think about what's the difference between Starburst Enterprise and Trino, right? And so I always like to think of Starburst Enterprise as the cool older sibling to Trino. It's a little bit more mature, a little cooler. It's got a car. It's got some cool stuff going on, leather jacket, and Trino is awesome in its own right. Don't get me wrong, but Starburst Enterprise is just better and a bit more grown up. And specifically what that means to me is that with Enterprise, you get more functionality, faster performance, more connectors, more security, better management, better integration into the ecosystem of tools that you already use today, data governance, integration, et cetera, et cetera. But what really speaks volumes to me is that when you use Starburst Enterprise, you get Starburst, right? You get best-in-class support from the folks who work for us, and they know Trino best because they created Trino, and they're continuing to contribute to Trino. But Starburst Galaxy takes that to a whole nother level, right? So one of the pain points is installing, managing, maintaining, monitoring Starburst Enterprise. And so Starburst Galaxy alleviates all that, right? So it's a fully managed service. It's Starburst Enterprise as a managed service and more.
What's the experience there for developers on Kubernetes first? And then on contrast, what would Galaxy look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kubernetes, like you get all the benefits of Kubernetes, like it's self-healing and, it's sort of like a modern way to manage it, but you're still managing it yourself, right? And so you still have to monitor it. If it goes down, it's still your responsibility, that sort of thing. Whereas Starburst Galaxy is a software as a service offering, right? So like we are taking in that responsibility of installing, managing, maintaining, monitoring the service, right? And so it's a huge win, like who wants the pain of that? And so, it's kind of like, there are other products out there. This is really just, it's 2021. This is the way the world's working now, is that things are available as a service, which is great because now Starburst is playing that game as well. I think there are a lot of exciting roadmap ideas of what we can build into Galaxy. And because it's a hosted platform, the sky's the limit, right? First and foremost, we're focusing on performance and flexibility. And then beyond that, there are exciting features that are either already available now or they're en route. Like in the immediate future, we're like updating our query editor and our notebook environment. We're thinking about usage and query optimization metrics built into the environment. So you can easily see, what are your users doing? What queries are being run, what's taking the most time, how can you like tune billing and things like that. Obviously we've got our BI and data science tool integrations and more. I'm also excited about more advanced things like the ability to do cross-cluster analyses within the environment of Galaxy, but also hybrid analytics. So the idea of like going across cloud environments. So right now we're just in AWS. We're quickly going to be adding GCP and Azure and potentially other clouds. But the idea is like, what if you have data in multiple clouds? Like just being able to like, click a few clicks and then you're automatically analyzing data across clouds. That's really exciting to me.
Do we have any plans for like data governance in terms of like, you have now all of this, these catalogs, this, and it's kind of hard to manage a lot of that and understand where to find it all once you're able to get there, but like, where's the map? And so do we have anything that we've been working on with any partner companies or anybody that could help us in that direction? I know there's like open source projects like a Munson that people can use, but like there's
I think there's a lot of really cool projects out there involving data governance. There's a lot of really cool products in cataloging worlds. And we are, excited to bring that all into Galaxy. So that is absolutely on the roadmap.
And one last question, is there going to be any free offerings coming up anytime soon? Is that on the roadmap?
Absolutely. We're building out, we've got a free trial. So if you're interested, absolutely reach out to us. We are very excited about it. And then we're talking about sort of a free tier. So like being able to just play around with it in your own environment and see what's what.
We'll keep you all up to date on when you can start to play around with Galaxy and Trino for free for just a little bit and get to know this incredible service called Starburst Galaxy. Thank you so much, Colleen.
Thank you.
Okay, So Manfred, we didn't have a release yet.
I know. You know what happened? Last time we covered 2. Today we're covering none.
Yeah, I know. We always. I feel like we get these bursts, like a bursty type of traffic when it comes to these releases. You know, it's like we get a whole bunch, and then we're kind of like, oh no, we did too many last time, or it's the scheduling thing, really. You know, it's really comes down to we need to fix the Trino release scheduling, or at least maybe the Trino Community Broadcast scheduling to align better.
Yeah, I have a hunch that 359 is just around the corner. It's been like, I don't know, a bit over 2 weeks by now. So I'm sure it's going to be happening. Oh, who knows? Maybe even over the weekend or something. But I don't want to do any spoilers that go into more detail. But I'm very excited to tell you about just one change that's coming.
Big spoilers.
Just one, okay?
Let me tell you about this.
So, for those of you that set up Trino in an enterprise environment, they often get these like arguably kind of silly requirements where it's like everything has to be secure, right? Like the connection to the Trino cluster has to be secure, the connection to the data sources from the cluster out has to be secure, but also everything inside the cluster has to be secure, right? Like the worker talking to the coordinators and that kind of stuff. And obviously we have a solution for that. It's called internal communication. You set up a shared secret, and then you have to have all the hosts configured with a fully qualified domain name. You have to have certificates for all of them. They have to all be in the same trust chain, blah, 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 right? So massive pain in the neck. Now, with some brainstorming and stuff and some late night hours where Dane, our fearless leader and creator of Trino, actually hacked into the guts of, you wouldn't believe what he had to do. He got a PR in, so he worked with actually the people in the Jetty project. For those of you that don't know, Jetty is like Eclipse Jetty is sort of the web server that sits like underneath the hood in Trino. He had to get some changes there and done. Then he had to do some changes in the underlying framework. That's the sort of the application generator under Trino that's called Airlift. Some changes there, and then now some changes in Trino. And all of that together gives you a feature where you just set up a little property, and then all the security and host stuff, everything happens magically. And I'm so excited about that because, writing documentation for complex things like that is just terrible. And being able to tell customers that struggle with that security kind of stuff, because, it gets complicated in Kubernetes and stuff like that, being able to tell them, hey, switch on that little flag, and then boom, things will happen. That's awesome. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I've always been interested in that. Do you know any more about like why companies usually push for something like that? Because I've always thought I've always seen Trino installations usually be like hidden behind some set of
typically that's the case. So I've worked in various large companies over the course of my career so far, and also smaller ones. And often what's happening is, in my experience anyway, that there's some sort of like general blanket policy that is like everything has to be secured, and then the InfoSec or whatever department you want to call them gets very powerful about, they get bombarded by all the security vendors that everything has to be secure, and there's all this vulnerability, and a lot of scaremongering is often happening. And then other people have often a very hard time to say, look, this is unreasonable. The cluster is already completely private. Nobody has access to it. Who cares what the traffic is in that cluster?
Yeah.
So there's these like blanket requirements often get shoved down the throat of the deployment team.
Yeah, that because I was wondering if that was like more of a concern for like internal people being nasty or something.
Yeah, that's basically what it boils down. And my point is often is like, well, if that's a problem, you have bigger problems.
Hiring those people.
Anyway, I'm just very excited because it's a showcase for how amazing our relationship is with like upstream projects that we're working with, Airlift and Jetty, and like how deep into the guts of things we have to go, right? Like Dane was debugging like Eclipse Jetty code and working with the actual developers of that project, and like checking things out on the certificate stack and how that works on the JVM and that kind of jazz. And that's not something you like. I mean, there's no way I could do that.
Yeah, no, I am always, anytime we talk about the finding out what Dane actually did to get some feature to work, I'm always pretty impressed. Yeah, that's really, I mean, it's great that we have that pushed out there. I just, I still am so perplexed by that requirement, but at the same time, I mean, it's so good that we have like the ability to give that to people who actually need it. So so fantastic. Thanks for letting us know about that. And that's coming out 359.
Yeah, it's merged.
Okay. That's landing. Cool. All right. Well, let me go ahead and do a quick share screen. So I wanted to cover real quick. We have the Trino Summit that we announced the last couple shows actually, and there's a bit of a change going on. So first off, Trino Summit initially was going to be an all virtual event, and due to the recent kind of things opening up a little more, we were starting to see that we saw the opportunity that we wanted to actually push to make this a hybrid event. With that, there were a couple things that we had to shift around in the schedule, as well as we found out that this initial date that's showing up here on the landing page for the event right now is saying September 15th. And that's actually going to no longer be correct. We are going to be adjusting that date because we found out that this actually conflicts with Yom Kippur. And we had a sizable enough portion of our community that would have been a conflict for them. We didn't want to make it anything where they couldn't attend. So we are moving it now to October 13th. That is pretty much the official one. I say it's pretty much official because we will do the official announcement and rolling out for call for papers and everything in July, late July. So I think that's probably it's not this week. I think it's next week. And so all of this stuff is going to get updated. So look forward to that. I just wanted to make a quick mention because we did take off right now we have updated this with the save the date. And now that the date's changed and everything, it's just like, you just got to wait. And I've been getting a couple questions about this. So just wanted to let everybody know it's still all happening. It's just things are having to change around with the hybrid event and the fact that we had to make the change for Yom Kippur. So, but still really exciting. I'm really stoked to see a lot of you face to face in October. So looking forward to that. And we'll have we already have a pretty cool speaker lineup. I'll just hint at, it's definitely at least we're going to have Netflix and LinkedIn showing up there. So, and amongst other speakers that we are still getting the total confirmation, but then we still have even more opportunities because, we'd like to hear you as well. So, definitely sign up for the call for papers if you have an interesting subject to talk about.
And if you're planning to go there in person, make sure you get your vaccination sorted out and potentially check your travel papers because who knows what happened in the last 2 years with those.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Because we have not been using those, have we? And one thing to be noted there as well, while we don't require you to be vaccinated to attend the event and virtually, you still have that option if you don't agree with vaccinations, if you or do not want to get vaccinated, you can attend virtually. That's still an option for you. But if you do come live, you will have to have the proof of vaccination as well. And we'll have that in the registration forms and everything. You can upload the proof of vaccination. So anyways, all stuff to look forward to, ready to give some high fives to everybody when I get to meet them in person for finally. So with that, shall we make our way up to the concept of the week? All right. So concept of the week, we are talking Trino for the Trinewbie. So on the notes, I'm not going to go through a lot of this in really heavy detail. I basically took out a couple blurbs from the book. I'm literally blanking right now. Trino, the definitive guide that was written by Manfred and
Matt and Martin.
Yes. And so I wanted to highlight this as part of the concepts and put this in the show notes specifically because Starburst is offering this for free. You gotta basically give a little bit of your information and then you basically get a digital copy for free. And so it's a ridiculously invaluable asset to have when you're starting out in Trino. And all of it's been updated. We had it originally, it came out whenever we were under the brand of Presto, and now we have it branded out for Trino and have all the updates and a lot of errata that were fixed here. So that is this is going to give you a little bit of a taste of kind of what Trino is, like what problems it's actually solving, and then talk about the data lake kind of use case for it and how it evolved to be the sequel on anything use case as well. So we're going to get talk a little bit about that more generically, kind of as we talk with Marius, and then we'll get more into the weeds of contributing to Trino and how you actually do it after we go over Marius's journey. But without further ado, let's hop back over into this screen and Marius. I wanted to bring you front and center. Tell us about kind of a little more about. You said you got started in by checking out that Pinterest. It was a query book, right? And that kind of moved you over into Trino land. What was your What did you do? Did you start on Slack or where'd you go? I kind of just want to kind of understand your journey as of like 3 months ago.
Actually, I learned about the query book. A friend of mine described it to me. Showed me a small demo of it, and he mentioned it works with Presto and with Spark SQL, and it does this transparently. And I asked him, "What is Presto?" And then he said, "Yeah, just something that we use to query on everything." And then I got interested. Obviously, I did a search on Google about Presto. I got landed. Google did a good work for landing me on Trino's website, and then I read a bit about the story, how the Presto come to be created, and the creators leaving Facebook to concentrate further on Presto, and eventually they created Trino. And then I downloaded the installation on my computer and wanted to try it out.
Did you do Docker or how did you install it? I'm just kind of curious which one you prefer. Did you just do the tar?
Yes, I just downloaded the archive and
okay.
Actually, I did a scenario which is not necessarily the most recommended one for the newbies, because I was trying to make a test query on Amazon S3, and this got me to a lot of unexpected trouble because I had to install Apache Metastore software in order to have it running, and fortunately there was you and also Ashar from the Trino community who just jumped. I tried for 1 hour or 2 hours to get it running, and I was about to leave it as it was because it wasn't running and it wasn't saying anything. Right? And then you jumped in on Slack and to help, and I was very, very impressed of the help, and also of the separation between the storage and the compute.
Yeah.
And I somehow, little by little, I keep on sticking to the project, and I must say that I'm very fond of it.
Awesome. Yeah. There's this kind of interesting inflection point I feel like we're at in Trino right now. And I talked a little bit about this at a meetup that I was at recently. When you start out on some of these projects, that they start out in a company like Facebook, it's very focused in on one particular use case, and then they bring on a couple of the other kind of big tech companies in to kind of vet their ideas and maybe add in more use cases. You start out in these kind of like scenarios where people say like, oh, okay, I've heard about Trino. The big companies are talking about it and doing it, but it's not for the little guys yet, and that you have to have like a team of engineers to install it. And so as you go kind of along this like x-axis of like project maturity, you get to this point where you're kind of just expected to do it without docs, you're expected, or minimal docs, or you kind of have this thing where you're like, oh yeah, these people are, unfortunately, like we have to focus more on the actual product, right? Versus trying to kind of appease every single person that is interested in the project. But as the project actually matures, and it gets to this point where, like all the Silicon Valley people have it, whatever. It gets to this point where you kind of have to start really thinking about, wait, like we need to make sure that this is easy to install. And just the fact that you were kind of mentioning your first part that you were having difficulties working on it for 2 hours, like, we this is something that Manfred and I have talked about a lot recently. I know this has been something on Manfred's mind specifically. He does a lot of the things in the docs world, and this is his primary charter in thinking, like, how do I make this easier? So while I'm happy that we were able to kind of meet you there and the community and help enable you in other ways, I still want us to get to this point as a project where we are now kind of moving towards bringing on the user that does not, or the team, the engineering team that doesn't have 1 million hours, or like people who already have been involved in the project to actually be able to get it up and functioning. We need to have this to be something that the brand new person who's never heard of Trino can just come on and be like, hey, I can click this button, I can do this thing, and I can actually get to understand how to use Trino and get it working in just a few steps. And this is something that, why I say we're at that inflection point now where we're getting these resources and moving in that direction. And I'm hoping that the stories start to become, instead of, oh yeah, things got good once I actually started talking to you guys. I'm very happy that we were there for you, and being able to bring that to a close for you, and you can now be a part of the community. But at the same time, I want that to be a story of, I got in, I started playing with it like in 5 minutes, and then, I realized it was awesome. And then I got to the community and it was even better. That's the story I hope we can start to tell in Trino land. But I do, I am glad that we at least have, I think that, from what you're saying, like the community bits are starting to fill in pretty well.
Just to clarify, though, like what Marius was struggling with was setting up the Hive meta store, and that's only a required piece if you are wanting to query any object storage with the Hive connector, which, by the way, was renamed to just the Hive connector in the connector.name property recently. Compatible, but different.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily required. For example, he could have used Amazon Glue, and then he wouldn't have had to set that up, right? Like the Glue data catalog.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, right? Like if you use some other system, it just depends on what data source you query. Marius happened to choose one that's very typical, but unfortunately has that third-party software requirement. At least he got off the ground with Trino itself pretty easily, I think. So that's cool.
Yeah. There is something to be said. Like Trino is a difficult project in that you have all these connectors, right? And so you not only have to worry about Trino's setup and installation, but you have to go the other route and think, how do I actually get these other databases installed, flawlessly and easily, so that basically people can utilize it. And one thing I think we're heading to there is, a lot of this stuff with containerization and Kubernetes and stuff like that. But we're getting there's definitely a slow walk towards that. And as we mature and move further in that direction, I think that's going to also help make all the things that you have to deploy, like meta stores and other databases and things like that, much simpler for anybody trying to get scaled up. So then a lot of people get involved to some degree. Like they'll start up Trino and they'll use it for a little bit, and maybe they'll bring it into their company. But you didn't just stop there. You kind of started saying, okay, well, I don't know. Tell me about what it was like when what got you to say, well, I want to like look at the actual code, or what was the next step after you got Trino running?
The next step was I started browsing a bit open PRs, and I had a look on what the PRs are doing. Obviously, when at the time I was pretty much out of context, but there were very, very minor Java related improvements, code cosmetics. Let's call them like this. And I said I could make a PR just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing was that I cloned the repository, and in starting off with any new project. Actually, it's not a new project. It's a project which has 20,000 commits or 23,000 commits.
Yeah.
When starting off, you have to go through the burden of downloading all the dependencies, setting it up, hoping that it will not complain for this or that JVM related stuff.
Yeah.
And in my case, this step went flawlessly, and I could make the PR. And then I simply thought, okay, code cosmetics is good and fine, but I just tried to see a good first issue.
Yeah.
And you have the label good first issue. There's quite a lot of them, good first issues, and I just took one which I thought I'm familiar with a few databases that Trino is working with, and I said to myself, I might as well try to refactor some tests which were dealing with Cassandra, I think, with the Cassandra database. And I was very, very impressed by the fact that the tests, the automated tests, take very, very small time. I mean, there are some tests which take a bit longer, in a matter of minutes. They have a lot of test cases, but there are lots and lots of tests which are which run very, very fast, and this allows a really, really good experience for a new.
So how did you set up? What did you set up? Like, you had a JVM, you followed the instructions. Did you end up what IDE did you use, for example? Did you run the tests in the IDE, or?
Yes, I just cloned the repository. I use JetBrains as JetBrains IDEA, and I just followed the instructions, and as previously mentioned, in my case, it went flawlessly for getting off the ground and starting the development server, or starting the CLI, the client, the Trino CLI for making queries. All this worked on my case, and this was a very, very reassuring.
It's satisfying, isn't it, when you get something done?
Yes, generally I contributed to multiple projects along my career, and it's really a stepping stone, let's say like this, when you just clone the repository, and then you just click Maven clean install. In this case, we are using Maven.
Yeah.
And you expect you skip the tests. I mean, in my case, I skip the test so that I don't wait a long time, and I just hope generally that it will just run fine. And in this case, it went very good, and then things started to work, and a very, very big thing that motivated me is the fact that the members from the community, the newbies, and there are employees who maybe are not that how to say, maybe they are not that familiar with the software, but and there are the committers and the maintainers who are very, very deep into the Trino technology. They are all very humble, and they contribute with answers or with opinions on how if I was stuck during these few months since I joined the community, there was always a helping hand, and this is something that I appreciate very much.
Yeah, I remember, David, we were talking about, this was during the rebrand episode, and I was talking to David Phillips about, his one of the things that I think you have to learn when you start moving into like kind of moderating and maintaining an open source project is when you're talking to people on their pull requests, like you're dealing with a human on the other side, and this human has like emotions and has, feelings that can easily be hurt. And so you're not just talking to some, a lot of times I think we see a screen and letters and maybe an avatar, and especially if the avatar doesn't have a human picture on it, like it's easy to kind of think almost like you're just talking to another machine or something. And so obviously like logically you don't think that, but it's just, it's easier to disconnect yourself and be kind of a rude person on the internet versus, face to face. And you see a lot of this kind of toxic developer culture kind of, fill out in a lot of open source projects, just because I think that's one of the big factors, as well as just, there was a bit of aggrandization about, being this jerk programmer sometimes. And so people kind of followed that mentality or that kind of ethos in the developer culture. Like if you're not a good developer, you just don't belong here. And
it's also hard though, right? Like, I mean, like I've maintained many open source projects over my like Android Maven plugin and others, and often you're like the lone wolf running this thing, and you're getting contributions, and people get demanding, and that like, well, what's happening? Why aren't you cutting the new release? So it is hard on both sides, and I think that's what we have to keep in mind, right? Like it is all about working together in the end, and if you stay humble and work together, we can get a lot done. And I think Marius is a great example. I think you started also picking off some docs tickets that we created with the docs and like first issue label and stuff like that, just dipping your feet in, even as a user, right? I mean, you're very experienced. You're a Java developer that has done other open source projects, but you don't have to necessarily be that experienced, right? Like we did this writing day a while ago, and we had people that never even like knew about Java, and they did a little bit of a contribution here and there on the docs, right? So I think it's great to stay humble, but at the same side also as a contributor, it's sometimes you can't just be so don't be too demanding either, right? Like it's hard, right? Like
it's a balance.
All of us are super busy, right? Like it's like.
And there's also cultural things too, right? Like there's also there are people that have different ideas about what's rude and what's not rude. Yeah. And so you also have those types of things. Like some people are kind of and some people are more online. Some people are separated in different day schedules. So it's you have such a melting pot in any kind of project like this. So it is important to always keep an open mind, and that's definitely advice for the Trinewbie that's coming even into our project. We're very welcoming. We're a very humble group. I modestly say so that we are very humble.
Is that an oxymoron or what?
And so, but I like to think that we do our best to kind of be a welcoming environment, and based on what people typically say about their experience once they're involved in the community, that seems to be reflected. And so, while we do that, we also do kind of hope that like the people joining also kind of take in this culture and are remember that there's a human being on the other side that's reviewing your code, as well as when you start to get in that more of that role, if you start to get active into it, think about that and always keep that in your mind. And we're all kind of on the same team trying to make amazing software, amazing fast query engines that have little bunnies powering them, and so just keep that in mind. And that's I think like you were saying, Manfred, like Marius is a perfect example of why we do that and why we think like anybody that comes in may be the next person that will be a maintainer.
There's like I just looked on the Slack on the general channel. There's nearly 4,500 people now, right? So it's a sizable community of people hanging out and working together.
Yep.
Maybe Marius, what have you done then? You said you got like RPR going, but like what did you like? Is there a list or like seems like you've been very busy? And are you using Trino in production yourself now, or is it still just a passion hackery or?
No, it's currently it's just a passion project, and the thing that I wanted to since I was studying, I was using SQL for lots of times, decades now, but I always asked myself, how do the people behind the SQL, behind the ones writing the databases, do it? And to be honest, I didn't have the right motivation to start doing it and to really see how things are running. And I've been using now another cloud database who's also separating compute from storage. And I was looking at the progress and how the computation is taking place. And I was asking myself, how do they do it behind? And I think Trino, the experience with Trino came at the right time because I actually could see how Trino is doing. I mean, it's not something that I clearly understand now, but I have a pretty good a head start now. I understand now that the basics, how the database is running. We have the analyzer part, and we have what's happening behind when SQL query comes in, and all these things led me to dive within the Trino code, and it's very, very exciting to be able to contribute to this very good piece of software.
Awesome.
Yeah, SQL is a bit different in an aspect, right? Like, SQL, as people so often say, it's a bit magic in the sense that any programming language you like have to write all the stuff what it actually has to do, and SQL is a bit different from a like programming point of view, because you just tell it, get me that data, and then the engine has to go, well, how am I actually going to do that? So all that smart is what you're looking into, like how it has to understand what does the user even mean when it says select where something, right? Like that planning and processing, and then where to get the data from. And I think that's definitely engineering wise definitely very interesting. So
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I'm not the only one thinking like this, but now that there are lots and lots of people interested in doing insights, it's pretty clear that they don't want to learn programming in order to do a map reduce job just to get their insights coming to them.
Yeah.
But they are more or less, I mean, they are starting to get more and more ready to type an SQL statement, and that's why SQL is doing a pretty much really good job to democratize the access to information. I think.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like it's a cool thing. It actually goes to like this whole service architecture thing, right? Where there's a lot of problems that you're kind of separating and abstracting away. And in general, like, it's like the declarative versus imperative type of thing, right? Imperative, we're always like, coding exactly what happens at exact times, managing the memory and doing every little piece versus, with declarative, you're basically saying, this is a language that tells me what I need to do. Like if you look at Kubernetes now, that's becoming so huge because now you can just basically have this set of declarative pieces of configuration. You don't necessarily know how it's going to get spun up or what actual underlying system it's going to work on. It's all up to Kubernetes to kind of manage that. But then it kind of does the magic for you, and you're kind of left with only the only part you have to think about is, this is what I need. You figure it out, go get it for me, and do some magic, and it works. So that's why I think, yeah, it is definitely something that, and the better part is that, like, it's so ubiquitous now. It's like a light switch. Everybody kind of, at least in the analytics world, most people that are in some sort of analytics role or data science role, they have all their different languages and all their different frameworks, but the one kind of unifying piece there is always pretty much been SQL, and that's been why we keep bringing it back. It's people keep saying that SQL is kind of maybe dying and all these things, the same way that Java's dying, right? But you keep seeing it, like, it never goes. Each year it's still here, and so it's one of those things that has super high utility. It's been around forever, and it's pretty much just not going anywhere, and super useful. So yeah, it's cool to peek underneath and actually get to learn more about that. So how many? I know you're very modest, Marius. Like I asked this to you before, and I actually erroneously put out, I think that you had done. I had seen 4 PRs whenever I put out the description here. Just brag about yourself for like 1 second and tell us how many PRs you actually have out right now. Just curious.
I really don't count them. I don't really think it's that important. But it's something over 10 in the meantime.
Okay, great. And this is 3 months.
Actually, I use the PRs to my advantage. If I do a PR, then, for example, this is how I got in contact with Manfred. I did a PR about the documentation, and I know that if I do a PR, I will get answers to my suppositions. Or if I do a PR for writing a function, I know that, Martin from Trino or Kasia from Trino will jump in, and they will actually help. Or with David Phillips, I know that I was... one of my first PRs were actually typing the method clear in the Trino CLI. I happened not to know that we have the shortcut Command L, and for clearing the console. And I just wrote a clear command, and we just talked about it. I also learned along the way that there is a shortcut to do this. So actually, I use them. It's not that I'm that good. As said, I use all these things to get a better understanding. And while doing a PR, I get really the privilege to interact with very experienced engineers working at this software.
That's a fantastic.
And I guess it also forces you to learn things.
I was going to say that's a fantastic way of looking at it too. Is PR? Some people see PR as kind of like these badges and achievements, but you're saying it's more. You see it as more of a kind of like a learning module.
It's an opportunity to collaborate. There are really. Lastly, I didn't know there's a function called min hash to verify the similarity between two documents, and I didn't know anything about it, but I just stumbled upon it, and this led me to read the paper behind it, and then I interacted a bit with Martin because he was the initial developer, and I got a better understanding on what this function was written for, and then I got to use the Lambda functions, which are available in Trino, which is really a neat feature. I mean, we cannot say that SQL is dying, since we have Lambda functions, we have the functions developed by Kasia, match recognize, which is really impressive.
Yep.
It's really good to be part of this.
Awesome. Well, we're super honored to have you in our community. We're super impressed by all the things you've done in just the last 3 months. And, you know, or anybody that's kind of listening in, you know, it's totally possible to, you know, get ramped up. And even if you're not, you know, pulling out a whole bunch of PRs in the beginning, like a huge chunk of those pull requests that you've been doing, Marius, it's focused on the docs as well. So that is as we were talking about before, when it comes to getting people ramped up, I mean, I feel like docs are becoming like, I mean, they're always important, but they're like, it's becoming more and more crucial that we have those that documentation, and Manfred will always gladly take more pull requests for documentation, because we need it, and we need that so that we can make that ramp up process for anybody on any connector to kind of go from, you know, maybe hour to like or less to something like, you know, the 5 minutes that we want on any connector. It's not, you know, so that's incredible that you have that, and I hope that people kind of find inspiration there. Now that you've been kind of you know, I'm guessing you're going to continue working on various pull requests, and you're as you kind of grow and you're trying to learn more. You know, is there anything that you're specifically focused in the project that interests you a lot, or where you're kind of like, you know, I have my favorite connector. No, it's no mystery to anybody that I love Elasticsearch, the Elasticsearch connector. So that's kind of like my place I like to hang out. I review other things here and there, but that's mostly where I particularly contribute. Is there anywhere that you found particular interest, or are you just kind of like trying to be as breadth first as possible when it comes to like attacking the project?
I think the second option applies better to me, because if I get a lot of breadcrumbs along the way, I can compile them to have a better context where this tool can be useful. And as mentioned previously, while doing this miscellaneous work here a bit and there a bit, I get to learn new people and new very interesting ideas, and exchange pretty much very good ideas. And I think I'll continue to my journey to understand how a database works.
Awesome.
Yeah. How a database engine works. Yes.
So at some stage in the future, can we have you back to explain it to me as well?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that would be great if you could actually tell me, Manfred, what's going on.
Hopefully we'll get to the point where it's where it's explained within the docs, and everybody can contribute.
So slowly you're going to write the documentation so that we can understand what's going on. Got it.
And we'll keep going at it for sure.
I really think that is a good strategy to understand something. I try to write about it, and while thinking about it, let's say I refine my understanding about the concept in question.
Awesome. Cool. That's great. I really like that outlook, Marius. You have like, I feel like you have just the right mindset when it comes to open source too, and just like being a contributor.
There are people who are very good at getting things done, and there are people who are really good in spreading the word and doing the documentation. But here at Trino, there's really a good mix of people being able to do both. And yes, I think there can be a lot of things built on top of that.
Awesome. Well, love that journey, love that story. And I really like, again, I think like the biggest thing I pull away from when every time I have a conversation with you is just how my own like motivations for like kind of getting into open source was all like, I just want to be like writing code and doing a cool project with other people. But like the learning aspect that you're bringing up there, it's just like, yeah, that's really powerful stuff. And so thanks for kind of sharing all that with us. And, you know, I think it's a good frame of context for anybody who's approaching open source, especially for the first time, to kind of come in and thinking about, you know, what they can do and kind of, you know, how it will help them and how it will also benefit the general project at large. So, So with that, I am going to do a quick wrap up and talk a little bit about contributing to Trino as kind of the final part that we're going to talk about. And I mainly want to first talk about some of the roles that we have this particular page here in the Trino website called Development Roles. You can find it by going to the development page, and it's one of the pages that are linked from the initial page. But I wanted to make this a little more obvious because it is a little buried at the time, and I think it's kind of important to understand how we view some different players in the community. So we have, participants. These are people that I would say generally use and know about Trino in some way, and so typically it's by using Trino. They'll kind of hop in on the pull request or on the issues and kind of engage in discussion about kind of things they'd like to see, and particularly suggest features, talk about bugs, and one of the things that we take in this role, like. Sometimes there's this high level of emphasis on the contributor. And while we love folks that are contributing codes and documentation, we really, really think that this role is the most important role out of all, because it really comes down to how Trino will evolve and how Trino will become better is ultimately by the aggregation of use cases and the ability for us to kind of take those on and basically that'll indicate two things. One, it's interest in this field of analytics and SQL to know that we're kind of heading in the right direction of how we should be, addressing people's pain. And then two, crap, I forgot the second point. But I was thinking of the first point. I had the list there, and then it escaped from me. But I think the main point that I'm trying to make here is that this really comes to addressing, figuring out how we can bring in these use cases and ultimately grow as a project and bring on features that maybe we didn't that wasn't part of the let's say first 100 companies that kind of came in and really adopted Trino. This ends up kind of growing to a much broader community, a much more diverse community of smaller companies, of smaller teams, and maybe individual contributors that really just took a special interest into Trino. And so you start getting this interesting broad spectrum of use cases, and ultimately like that gets brought in not necessarily always with just people who are contributing code, but that really comes in with people who are using the software and saying, hey, I have this this itch, can you guys scratch it? And and we do our best.
But for this participation, what I want to point out is this can be super minimal and it can be basically nothing, right? Like if you're joining Slack and just hanging out and watching what other people are talking about, you're part of the community, you're a participant.
Absolutely.
If you are cloning the repository, or even if you're just on GitHub starring the repository and showing that you're interested, or on a release note post, you're retweeting it or whatever. All of these things are very important activities that help us as a project to figure out that, well, people did like that release, or they did like a certain feature, or they are paying attention. All that stuff is very important for us as a project. So if you are a Trino user, do any of those things as you like. And be part of our community.
Please do. And definitely, if you like, even some people think like, oh yeah, it's not I'm going to share a tweet about something. Maybe it's not going to be that big of a deal, but it's a huge deal actually to actually just tell your friends about Trino, even if you're not doing it on a social media account or anything like that. Just telling other people about Trino, your experiences in the community and pieces like that. That is really what makes projects successful.
Well, Marius was told by a friend, right?
Yep, exactly. Case in point right there. So that's what we mean when we think of the participant, and this applies to a very large spectrum, and pretty much anybody who's involved even remotely in the community as a participant. Then, we have another level that we call contributor. And these are people that, essentially, we're going to talk about this a little more. We'll go through the process of signing a CLA, and we'll actually contribute code or documentation or something that kind of, require, some sort of artifact that gets contributed. It could also be a blog. And so any of these kind of contributions makes you in the contributor level. Then we have reviewers. Reviewers are maybe, just it is likely kind of an overlapping set with contributors. Sometimes people that are reviewers also contribute, but sometimes, it could be just as simple as reviewing a blog or something like that. You then fall under this phase of or type of person. And so these people are trying to basically make sure that the contributions being made, the code or the documentation or the blog, the language of the blog, the way that we talk about things, align with the vision that has been kind of set forth by the Trino project and the Trino Software Foundation. So anybody can do this. You don't have to be a contributor to be a reviewer, though that typically is kind of the way that a lot of it happens. You usually start contributing and then you start reviewing other people's stuff. But, there's no requirement to be one first or the other. And then the next final level, and this is the level that is kind of for a small committee of folks that are basically called maintainers. Sometimes I think other projects like in Apache, I think it's called committer. And this is basically a core group of developers that are kind of the primary people that will decide kind of what kind of get the ability to kind of do merges, the ability to kind of bring in different kind of discussion on with the direction or the vision of the project, and ultimately there is a little more power in this role, I guess you could say, but the idea here is that there's this really cool Apache Hive thing that I linked in the notes. It talks about the process of becoming a committer, and they have this section called the dark side of becoming a committer, and it says that should go without saying, but here it is anyways. Your participation in the project should be a natural part of your work with, and it's in this case they were talking about Hive, but we would say Trino instead. And if you find yourself undertaking tasks so that you can become a committer, then you're doing it wrong, young Padawan. And so the motivations, it's particularly true if your motivations are primarily like negative or self-centered, like you want to just have the power. And so that's not why we have maintainers. The idea of a maintainer is to focus on the project health, make sure things don't fall through the cracks, make sure that people are being treated respectfully, and make sure that that ultimately that there is no bias in terms of how we're leading the project. And so this is really a role that takes a lot of active time, and so it's not like a passive like side gig kind of thing. It's one almost like I would say a full-time job, and so it's not to be taken kind of lightly if you do decide you want to get to where even be considered for a maintainer, or if you're ever asked, just know it comes with a lot of responsibility. And so we have a small set of people that are in this role, and we're very happy to have a lot of them kind of taking on that responsibility. So those are the responsibilities. We're going to eventually talk a little more about the contribution part, because I think that's going to be a huge majority. But before we do that, we want to quickly talk about the PR of the week. So this week's PR of the week is one of the ones that Marius did. So let me pull that one open. And it's pull request 8135. So this one, Marius, do you want to you can explain it better than I can. And thankfully, we have you here to tell us about it. So can you tell us kind of what this is addressing, and what motivated you to get started on it?
As you were mentioning, Manfred, sometimes it's enough just to see on Slack what's happening. And one of the users was complaining about the missing of a functionality related to changing the time zone or specifying the time zone within Trino. And in another context, I did something related in another project, and I thought this should go relatively fast. It didn't go that fast, but nevertheless, I learned a lot along the way, because I happened to interact with a grammar analyzer of Trino, and I happened to develop a full command and write tests about it, and write also the documentation on how to use it. Also learned along the way that setting the time zone is very, very can be very specialized. You can use the syntax that I was used to, like set time zone America, Los Angeles, or I don't know, Europe, Vienna. But you can also use time interval. You can there are quite a lot of different things, and we also have a local, so that you can, if you set a time zone for a short time within your session, and you want to get back to your regular settings, then you can switch back to the local time zone, of your
system.
CLI.
Got it.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought this was really neat that you actually got to get into a little bit of the AST definition here and actually build out a little bit of code with the parser. I always think these ones, when we're extending the existing support for SQL, are always a lot of fun. So basically when you touch the parser, you're actually extending some of the capabilities of Trino to handle another keyword in SQL. So these are always really fun. Whenever I get excited when I see the AST definition here. So
yeah, definitely, yes, I feel the same way, and I must say that not being experienced enough with a project, I always have double thoughts in doing big changes. I also made another SQL command from SQL 2016 standard, which is much more complicated.
Yeah,
and I'm really I have double thoughts in did I do it right, or I have good intentions, but I know that the maintainers, as you mentioned, they have a lot of responsibilities. So if I do some things and they seem to me that they work fine, and the maintainers also say, yeah, work seems to be good, in the end, when this gets merged, it's the maintainers who carry the burden of fixing the bugs that were left behind by me. Yeah. So I always have, I'm always very, I'm not very keen in changing the syntax, but nevertheless, it was very, very an interesting experience. And I hope that the user who was complaining about this may actually use it in the near future.
So great. I see that it's merged. Does that mean it's going to be out with 359?
That's what I see down here. Milestone 359.
Awesome.
So landing on the next one. So look forward to, we'll see. We'll bring that one up in the next show. Well, that's super awesome. And again, the way that you look at this, where you're seeing this burden on the maintainers, and you are taking that extra step of concern and care for that. Yes, the maintainers, it's ultimately their idea, but try not to be the kind of contributor that maybe just throws the code over and it's like, okay, it's kind of like that when we have the QA team and you just say, hey, it's your job to test it.
Your problem now.
Yeah, it's your problem now. I made the thing work. So for these cases, so I think go check everything. Let me just think about how can I and even asking that question. If you're new to the project, or if you're new to open source, you should hopefully feel a level of comfort, and especially I'm just putting it out there now, feel the level of comfort to go up to a maintainer and say, hey, I am, new to this, and I'm kind of concerned that if I make this contribution, it might have this problem. So, what are the extra things that you would suggest that I should be like looking out for, and or is there any kind of blog or resource that or book? I know in general there's a book that's recommended for just Java coding in general. It's do I have it here? Effective Java. This is one of the ones that like are particularly recommended by Martine, Dane, and David, as well as I think it might just be, I can't remember. I think it's somewhere in one of our recommendations to read through that book or know that book. So like having those types of resources to kind of fall back on in terms of like what's good practice and things like that is always a good thing to be thinking through as you're doing this. But you're not going to have it all in the beginning, and nobody has it all ever. So you just have to kind of take it in stride and just know that, work with them, let them know that you're concerned about, making this particular thing, and they'll we're here to work with you in terms of your growth as a contributor in that respect. But yeah, very great point that you're bringing up that there is that real concern there to bring that extra burden back on the maintainer. So thank you so much for this pull request and all the other pull requests, Marius. We don't always get to thank the authors of the pull request of the week here, so I'm just glad to say thank you very much.
Thank you as well for having me here.
Yeah. So now we're already over the hour. I don't know how much time we're going to go into this, but I would like to at least cover a couple of these steps that we use in terms of what it takes to contribute to Trino. We wanted to do a live contribution here on the show, but given the time, it might not make sense to do that today. What do you think, Manfred? Should we just?
Yeah, I think it's available in the notes, and I think we might do it another time. But I think it's worth going through, just outlining what the steps are. Probably
I'm gonna just go through this process offline and record it, and I will embed it in the notes. How's that sound? And because I really want to have a video that kind of goes through. We have some of the steps, but for people that like don't have never done this before, don't have an IDE or don't have all the steps. Like I wanted to have a holistic set of steps that we pulled together for this. And so the basic idea, I'll just run you through. So I'm going to cheat, and we're not going to do the demo today in interest of time, but we will have this outlined off the live stream. So first and foremost, you download your IDE. IDE is an integrated development environment. It's basically this little piece of thing here that has this, all your code that you can do. You can actually run the code and build the code and have your terminal all within the same application. So you don't have to be like jumping back and forth between your text editors, and has all these extra things too of syntax highlighting and things like that. That's what an IDE does. You're pulling that down, and we recommend the IntelliJ Community Edition. So you will have a link there, and you just go. There's Ultimate, which ultimately like 30. You can do the 30-day trial, but then you're eventually going to have to pay for it, or maybe your company may pay for it. So you already have Ultimate, but if you're not in that boat, and I always use Community. There's very few things that I've used that require Ultimate. Usually, if I'm in an enterprise setting, that's when I would need it. But for hacking on open source, Community does just everything you need. So you can pull that down, and it's totally free, and you just get it for whatever installation that you're running it on. And you're going to need to install Git. We have linked what Git is and kind of the a set of steps to install Git that is on the main Git website. You'll also have to install Docker. We use our testing framework uses Docker. Docker is basically allows you to run different services. So we were talking earlier, like you have to run databases and all these other things to connect to. So running that is easier to do in a containerized type of setup here. So we use Docker to spin up a local instance of, say, Elasticsearch or MySQL or meta stores, pieces like that need to be up in order for us to run tests on the integration test on the system. So, and it's also very useful if you want to play around with Trino yourself as well. So we have the steps linking to Docker here. Then you go and create a GitHub account if you haven't already. We also cover those steps as well. And GitHub is a free hosted Git repository. So again, these may be things that you know already, maybe things that you can just skip over. You already have this. Then you'll navigate to our Trino GitHub repository. While you're there, if you want to, give us a little star, and then after you're done starring us, give us a little fork. And once you fork the repository, what this does is it makes a copy of the Trino repository that you can actually commit your changes to, so that you don't have to have all your code sitting on your computer. You can write your code, commit it to this copy that you have on GitHub, and then later on it will actually be super useful, because you'll be able to do what's called a pull request into the system itself. So
just make sure you do that. It will do all that work in the branch.
Yeah, you do all that work in a separate branch. So we'll talk more about that. And in fact, that's probably something else I should add in here. We're definitely going to get a whole holistic list of like every step for the total Trinewbie at some point. Once you actually have that fork, you'll actually want to clone it and load it into IntelliJ. So you run this command git clone. It's going to have your username that you created in GitHub, and then after that, we have a couple link steps to open a Trino project or a Maven project in IntelliJ. Then you have to add the airlift code style checks. This is another piece that makes it really easy, so that when you want to, we have a very specific code structure that we want to adhere to. So you download the style definition, you load it into IntelliJ, and then anytime you're done with hacking on the code, you can just run reformat code on that file that you were working on, and then it will basically just format the code in the way that will be required for various steps to run. And I'll detail that whenever I actually run through this demo of creating an issue and actually running through the code itself. Then to build the project, one of our greatest resources in Trino history, I'd say, is this little cheat sheet that Fyodor Findason actually has. And it has a whole bunch of these like quick build, running Trino in the Docker, a whole bunch of these other things. But I always use it for this quick build thing that he has set up. So he specifically cuts out modules that aren't needed for your typical build. You do a clean install. You can split it over threads, multiple threads. I actually have no idea what this NSU parameter does, but I just keep it there because Pyotr does it. And then you're skipping the tests. If you unless you want to run a very specific test, you can skip all the tests so that you're not there waiting for an hour. And then you don't have to make the Java docs. You don't have to make the Maven source. You don't have to run the air check, basically the checks to make sure that your code is following through. You just want to get a build of the system so that it's running. That's what that build does. But then to actually check if you have any issues with the code style or anything like that, you could take out this air check skip all, and then you just you basically run almost the same command. And I only run that on, like, let's say if I'm running in Trino Elasticsearch, I would just, instead of doing this bang symbol here, the exclamation point, I take that out, and then I put just the one project that I'm trying to actually do my work in, and then remove the check for the code style. So that's part of.
This is a general thing, like this list where you have -PL that just says, the bang symbol says not those modules. And yes, you can see what he excludes. There's like the RPM build and stuff like that, things that are like downstream artifacts that you don't need if you're not using that specific artifact. And then in your case, where you're just building the Trino one, you just run it in there. You can also just go into that directory and run the command.
Yep. Yeah. So all the different options that if you want to do it there, I always typically just run it from the the root level. So that's why I always just like having this little list, and it's very clear about what's being run. So yeah, multiple options there. Once you've gotten to where your code is actually, good, and maybe you just do this well before, you have to sign a contributor license agreement. This is basically just a PDF that you'll print out, you'll fill out your information, and all you're basically saying is that you'll be adhering to as you contribute your code and all of your work, you'll basically be committing it to an open source project that is under the Apache license, and that you claim no ownership over that code that you commit. You send that to CLA at Trino.io, and then every few days, one of the maintainers checks it, and your name ultimately gets added to this contributor list that's in the same CLA repository. And so if you want to check the status, is my name in there yet? I can check bits on data dev, and there I am. So anybody who's been added there can go find that and see if they've been added yet. And once you're added, then you'll be able to actually do the contribution. So I'll quickly outline the contribution process. Again, the first step, the rest of these steps will be coming from this contribution process. You sign that contributor license agreement, and this is where the video is going to take place. You'll actually create an issue. An issue is basically like a ticket that's saying this is a unit of work or some feature, some bug that's happening, and I want to, this is the kind of behavior I'm seeing, and I would like to be resolved to have this behavior instead. That's basically what an issue does. And you can also go onto Slack and even do the same type of explanations. Like Marius said, there was a user that was kind of saying, hey, there's something missing from this, and I would really like to have this, being able to set the time zone during my session. So they went to Slack to particularly talk about it, and then somebody, I'm guessing, Marius, did you make the issue on that after you heard them? Okay.
Yes, Martin was also involved, and I asked about it, and I just said that I'll create an issue, and subsequently I'll open a corresponding PR for it.
Gotcha. So you would just go in, create the issue, and then after that, so either somebody else can create it if they see somebody saying it on Slack, or it can just be the original person that had the problem. And then from that issue, then you could implement the change. That's what we were talking about with building your project, going in and actually updating the code, and then adding a test usually to make sure that test works. And then once you get to the point where you've implemented the change, and as well as documentation, that's include tests and documentation as necessary. Then you'll add a pull request, and so the pull request is kind of what we were looking at before, where it's going to show the difference of what you have versus what is in the actual central repository's master branch. And then the test will get run whenever you submit to your local branch, and once those tests pass, you should be able to do a full-on pull request at that point. And then the maintainers go through this review process. Again, this was kind of, if we look back at Marius's pull request here, this is kind of the process that we see. So initially, he'll submit the pull request, say what it's about, say which ticket it ends up resolving, and that's the ticket, the issue. And then he'll ask a couple people to review it. They'll go through, they'll add various comments, this needs to get changed, or this could be simplified, And then, Marius is also kind of following up. Here are some kind of ways that I'm thinking about testing this. And you have kind of a bit of a dialogue on these pull requests, and it's great. You can do the same on issues as well. So ultimately, you have this kind of dialogue. You make sure the tests are running. You ultimately get some consensus of approval with the maintainers, and then once the review's been performed, then it gets merged in. Maintainer, again, this is addressing the concerns we were just talking about. Maintainer will merge in that pull request, and ultimately that will get pulled into probably the next release cycle. So that's the whole process in a nutshell. It's easier when it's kind of a lot when you're talking about it, but when you see it actually being done and you get to where you've gone through it the first or once or two times, it actually gets very kind of like you start taking a lot of these steps for granted. Let me say that. and especially because you don't have to keep installing Git, Docker, and all the other things from the first time. Once you've gone through your first kind of pull request, it becomes a lot easier to just continue and keep doing it after that. So sorry that this is a little bit of a less of a demo and more of an explanation at this point, but we'll go through and actually have a full demo that we'll nest into the show notes. So finally, the last thing I'd like to get on to is the question of the week. All right, so this question of the week was posted on Stack Overflow again. Found a really cool one that also Piotr Findason answered this one as well. Thought it was interesting. How do I remove nulls from an array in Trino? So the user asked, I'm extracting this JSON column in Trino and getting the output in an array like, so al is one of the, I guess, let's say it's a string or varchar. So array of varchar, and it has, al is the first one, null is the second value, and then new is a varchar that is on the third location of that array. So what their goal is to actually get rid of that null and just have an array of size 2 that says, al, comma, new. And they don't want to do any kind of fancy unnesting, all this other stuff. So Piotr replied with this very simple, elegant, again, we're pulling out these Lambda functions here that we keep seeing, but using this function called a filter. So this isn't pure Lambda, but it takes a Lambda function as part of as one of the arguments into this filter function. So what's really great is you take in the array, and anywhere that the array is basically true, then that is what those elements will get returned, and the rest will not be returned. So simple enough. You basically have a statement where you say select the array al, null, and new. And then return where, let's say, this is a Lambda function. So E is just kind of, I'm guessing, element or arbitrary E value. But I'm assuming he meant element here, E, and then where E is not null. So for all the elements here for E, E could be here, here, and here. We want to say this, we want to make sure that it's not the case where E is not null. So it will return al, it'll not return this null here, and then it'll return new, and then you get your array back. So so pretty straightforward, easy way to kind of tackle that problem without having to do some crazy, in traditional SQL, you'd have to do a lot of crazy stuff just to make that work. So now having these kind of functions make your life a lot easier. It's one of those examples of how that kind of stuff helps out a lot. So yeah, let's move on to the last little part. So Marius, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really great to see, hear your story and get to see particularly how you view being part of an open source community. I'm hoping it catches on to other folks out there that are interested. One thing I wanted to cover, actually, before I missed this out, I had somebody comment earlier on the show, Damon Aurora. He said, I love contributing to Trino. As a new contributor to open source, Trino has been a very welcoming community, I'm guessing he meant there, and has helped me a lot in getting started with the project. So Damon, thank you so much for that comment. We really appreciate having folks like you. He also kind of continued to say, I'm planning to soon shift gears and start making code contributions. Great. He's been doing a lot with the doc so far. Have you seen any of Damon's?
Oh yeah. He's over in I think in Toronto or somewhere over in Canada, and he's been doing a whole bunch of doc contribution and stuff. So it's great.
Yeah, well, thanks, Damon, and thanks for all your contributions as well. Again, that's what makes the community, right? Is bringing everybody's desires to kind of be a part of something bigger is all what we're here for, right? So I wanted to make sure I shouted him out before we ended the show. And Marius, thank you again for joining. Anything last closing words that you wanted to share with us before we hop off?
I would say that I'm also very happy to be part of this community, and same as Damon, I also share the impression that the people in the community are very much involved. The tech bar is very high, and the problems that you are attacking are very interesting. I think that the impact of this software is currently and will be as people start to use it continuously higher. So I think it's a very good investment for professional to jump in and try it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Manfred, you know anything before we hop off?
No, got to get back to writing communication and code.
Yeah, I know. It's time to get to work, people. All right. Well, thank you. We'll see you all in 2 weeks.
All right.
Music for the show is from the Mega Man 6 gameplay album by Krzysztof Sławikowski. Don't forget to give us a star on the Trino repository at github.com/TrinoDB/Trino. And for more information on future shows and to find show notes, check out trino.io/broadcast.